Welcome, good evening, and thank you for joining me for another journey into the distant past. Before we begin tonight's story, take a moment to get comfortable. Dim the lights. Settle into your favorite chair, or perhaps beneath a warm blanket. Allow the worries of the day to slowly drift away. Tonight, there is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to do, only the story ahead. And what a story it is. Because tonight we travel back nearly 2,000 years to a world of stone roads and marching armies, a world of emperors and distant frontiers, a world where the Roman Empire stood as the most powerful civilization on earth. Its cities stretched across continents, its soldiers guarded borders thousands of miles long, its roads connected lands from the deserts of North Africa to the misty forests of Britain, and among its many military units, one legion became the subject of a mystery that has fascinated historians for generations. The Ninth Legion, the famous Legio IX Hispana, a legion that fought for Rome for centuries, a legion that marched across battlefields, built forts, crossed rivers, conquered distant lands, and then, quite suddenly, it vanished from history. No final battle is recorded, no dramatic account survives, no ancient historian tells us exactly what happened. Instead, the Ninth Legion seems to disappear, leaving behind only fragments, clues, theories, and one of the greatest military mysteries of the ancient world. What happened to the lost Ninth Legion? Were they destroyed in the wild northern reaches of Britain? Did they perish in a forgotten battle beyond Rome's frontier? Were they secretly transferred elsewhere in the empire? Or does the truth lie somewhere between history and legend? Tonight, we will follow the trail of the Ninth Legion from its earliest days to its mysterious disappearance. But this is not simply a story about soldiers. It is also a story about the Roman Empire itself, about life on the frontier, about the people who lived beneath Rome's rule, and about the vast, often dangerous world that existed beyond the borders of civilization. As always, we will move slowly, gently, allowing the story to unfold at its own pace. So if sleep finds you somewhere along the journey, that is perfectly fine. The Romans themselves understood the importance of rest. Even the strongest legionary eventually laid down his shield and closed his eyes beneath the stars. Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. If you enjoy these relaxing history stories, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from tonight. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel across the world. Your support helps more people discover these peaceful journeys through history, and it allows me to continue creating long-form historical adventures for curious minds. Now, take a slow breath, let your eyes grow heavy if they wish, and imagine standing on a Roman road nearly 2,000 years ago. The sun hangs low above the horizon. A cool wind moves across the countryside. In the distance, you hear the faint rhythm of marching feet. Thousands of sandals striking stone, steady, orderly, relentless. A Roman legion approaches. Their armor glints in the evening light. Standards rise above the formation. Eagles of gold catch the fading sun. The soldiers march with practiced precision. They have traveled countless miles, through forests, across mountains, over rivers, toward places many people would never dare to go. Among them marches the Ninth Legion. They do not know that future generations will remember them. They do not know that historians will debate their fate. They do not know that one day they will become a mystery. For now, they are simply soldiers, tired from the road, focused on their duties, following orders from distant commanders, living ordinary lives beneath extraordinary circumstances. The Roman Empire around them feels eternal. Its cities are thriving. Its armies are victorious. Its borders appear secure. To many people living at the time, Rome seems unstoppable. Yet history often reminds us that even great powers have limits. Even mighty empires face uncertainty. And even famous legions can disappear. Imagine the evening camp being prepared. Tents rise in neat rows. Campfires begin to glow. Soldiers cook simple meals. Conversations drift through the cool air. Some men speak of home, others discuss tomorrow's march. A few simply enjoy the brief peace that comes at the end of a long day. Above them, the first stars appear. The world grows quiet. The mystery that will one day surround the Ninth Legion still lies far in the future. For now, there are only roads to travel, orders to follow, and another sunrise waiting beyond the horizon. As our journey begins, let us leave the campfire behind and travel deeper into the world of ancient Rome. Because before we can understand the disappearance of the Ninth Legion, we must first understand the empire they served, an empire unlike anything the world had ever seen. The roads stretch endlessly ahead. The standards flutter in the evening breeze. The legion marches onward, and our story has only just begun. As we continue our journey tonight, let us leave the marching legion behind for a moment and step back to see the world they inhabited. Because to understand the mystery of the Ninth Legion, we must first understand Rome itself. Imagine standing atop a hill somewhere in the Roman Empire during the 2nd century. The year is around AD 100. The empire stretches farther than any person can easily comprehend. To the north lie the forests of Britain and Germany. To the south, the deserts of Africa. To the east, distant cities filled with merchants and caravans. To the west, the endless Atlantic Ocean. Rome rules them all. At its height, the Roman Empire covered millions of square miles. Nearly 1/4 of the world's population lived beneath Roman authority. Its influence reached across 3 continents. Its power seemed almost limitless. Today, when we think about large nations, we often imagine countries connected by airplanes, telephones, and instant communication. Rome possessed none of these things, and yet it governed a territory so vast that messages sometimes took weeks or months to travel from one end to the other. Imagine being a traveler on a Roman road. The road stretches straight across the countryside. Stone paving lies beneath your feet. Milestones mark distances. Bridges cross rivers. Way stations offer shelter. The engineering is remarkable. Even after 2,000 years, some Roman roads still survive. The Romans understood something important. Empires depend upon movement. Merchants must travel. Officials must communicate, and armies must reach distant frontiers quickly. Roads made all of this possible. Imagine a map of the Roman Empire. Thousands of miles of roads connect cities large and small. Like veins carrying lifeblood through a body, these routes keep the empire functioning. A merchant in Spain can trade goods with Egypt. A governor in Gaul can receive orders from Rome. And a legion stationed in Britain can be reinforced if danger appears. Everything is connected. Everything depends upon order. And the Romans valued order deeply. Imagine entering the city of Rome itself. The capital is unlike anything most people have ever seen. Massive temples dominate the skyline. Public baths welcome thousands of visitors every day. Markets overflow with goods from around the known world. Ships arrive carrying grain, wine, olive oil, spices, and luxury items. The city is crowded, busy, alive with activity. At its peak, Rome may have contained more than 1 million inhabitants. For the ancient world, this is extraordinary. Most cities are tiny by comparison. Imagine walking through the streets. The sounds are constant. Merchants call to customers. Children play in narrow alleyways. Craftsmen work in open workshops. Water flows through aqueducts and fountains. Everywhere you look, there is evidence of Roman power. Yet Rome's greatest achievement may not have been its buildings, or its roads, or even its wealth. It was its ability to maintain control over such an enormous territory, and much of that control depended upon the army. Imagine the Roman military machine at its height. Dozens of legions stand ready across the empire. Each legion consists of thousands of professional soldiers. These are not temporary warriors gathered for a single campaign. They are career soldiers, highly trained, highly disciplined, experts in warfare. The Roman army becomes one of the most effective fighting forces in history. Its reputation spreads far beyond the empire's borders. Enemies fear it. Allies respect it. Citizens depend upon it. Imagine hearing that a Roman legion is approaching your town. The reaction is immediate. People know what it means: order, authority, the presence of Rome itself. A legion is more than a military unit. It is a symbol, a moving piece of the empire. Where the legion goes, Rome follows. This helps explain why the mystery of the Ninth Legion fascinates historians. Legions were not supposed to disappear. They were large organizations, carefully recorded, closely monitored. Their movements mattered, their victories mattered, their losses mattered. Yet somehow one of them appears to vanish. To appreciate how unusual that is, imagine a modern military division simply disappearing from official records. Questions would immediately arise, investigations would begin, explanations would be demanded. The same basic principle applies to ancient Rome. The disappearance of a legion should have left clear evidence. Yet in the case of the Ninth Legion, certainty remains surprisingly elusive. Imagine life along one of Rome's frontiers, far from the grand cities, far from the comforts of the capital. A soldier stands watch atop a wooden fort. Beyond the walls stretches unfamiliar territory, dense forests, rolling hills, unknown dangers. The frontier feels very different from Rome, and much of the empire consists of frontier. The Romans spend centuries pushing their borders outward, conquering new lands, building forts, establishing roads, creating order where they perceive chaos. Sometimes these efforts succeed, sometimes they do not. Every frontier presents challenges. Every frontier contains uncertainty, and nowhere is that uncertainty more apparent than Britain, a distant island at the edge of the Roman world, a place of misty forests, tribal kingdoms, and endless rain. A place where the Ninth Legion will eventually play a major role. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Before the Ninth Legion marches into Britain, before the mystery begins, we must first understand the men who served within a Roman legion. Who were they? How did they live? What did they eat? How did they train? What was daily life like for the soldiers who carried Rome's banners across the known world? Imagine the campfires of a Roman army glowing beneath the stars. Thousands of soldiers prepare for another day. Some clean equipment, others write letters home. Many simply rest after long marches. They are ordinary men living extraordinary lives. And in our next chapter, we will step inside the Roman military itself. We will walk beside the legionaries, share their daily routines, and discover what it truly meant to serve in one of history's greatest armies. The empire sleeps, the roads remain quiet, the frontier waits, and the story of the Ninth Legion continues. As we continue our journey tonight, let us leave the great cities of Rome behind and step inside the world of the legionary. Because before we can understand the fate of the Ninth Legion, we must first understand the men who served within it. Imagine waking before sunrise in a Roman military camp. The air is cool. Mist hangs low over the ground. Somewhere nearby, a trumpet sounds. Its notes drift across rows of leather tents. The camp slowly comes alive. Soldiers rise from their beds. Fires are rekindled. Equipment is gathered. Another day of military life is about to begin. For the legionary, this routine feels familiar. It has repeated itself countless times before. The Roman army is built upon discipline, routine, order. Every task has its place. Every soldier has his role. Imagine looking across the camp as dawn breaks. Rows of tents stand neatly arranged. Roads divide the camp into organized sections. Supplies are carefully stored. Guards stand watch at the entrances. Everything appears structured. Nothing is left to chance. This organization is one of Rome's greatest strengths. The Romans understand that victory often depends not upon bravery alone, but upon preparation. Imagine a young recruit arriving at a Roman fort for the first time. Perhaps he has never traveled far from home. Perhaps he has never held a military shield. Now he enters a world unlike anything he has known. Training begins almost immediately, and it is demanding. Roman commanders believe that difficult training creates effective soldiers. Imagine marching mile after mile beneath the hot sun. Heavy equipment rests upon your shoulders. The road stretches endlessly ahead. The pace remains steady. There are no shortcuts, no excuses. The legion marches because someday it may need to march into battle. Training prepares soldiers for that reality. Roman recruits quickly discover that military life involves much more than fighting. Imagine spending hours practicing with wooden weapons. These training swords are often heavier than real ones. The idea is simple. If a soldier can master a heavier weapon, the real one will feel easier to handle. Again and again, the recruits repeat the same movements. Thrust, step, block, advance. The exercises continue until they become second nature. The Roman army values repetition. Skills become habits. Habits become instinct. Imagine standing on a training field surrounded by hundreds of other recruits. Commands echo through the air. Officers observe carefully. Mistakes are corrected immediately. The standards are high. The expectations clear. Rome demands professionalism from its soldiers. And over time, the recruits transform into legionaries. Imagine receiving your equipment for the first time. The famous rectangular shield, the short sword known as the gladius, a helmet, armor, a dagger, various tools and personal items. Together, these possessions represent far more than military gear. They symbolize membership in one of the most respected fighting forces in the ancient world. The equipment is heavy, much heavier than many people expect. Roman soldiers often carry substantial loads during marches. Food, tools, cooking equipment, weapons, armor, everything travels with them. This requirement earns Roman legionaries a nickname among some observers. Marius's mules, a reference to their ability to carry enormous burdens over long distances. Imagine marching across a Roman road with thousands of fellow soldiers. The rhythmic sound of sandals striking stone fills the air. Standards flutter above the formation. Officers ride nearby. The column stretches far into the distance. Hours pass, then more hours. Yet the march continues. The Roman army is remarkably mobile, and mobility helps maintain control over a vast empire. Life in the legion is not entirely hardship. Imagine the evening after a long day's march. Camp has been established. Tents stand in orderly rows. Cooking fires glow softly. Soldiers prepare meals. Conversations drift through the air. Some men discuss their homes. Others share stories from previous campaigns. Friendships form. Rivalries emerge. Life settles into familiar patterns. Despite the strict discipline, legionaries are still ordinary people. They laugh, complain, tell stories, miss their families, dream about the future. Imagine a soldier writing a letter home. The camp grows quiet around him. By lantern light, he carefully records his thoughts. Perhaps he describes the landscape. Perhaps he mentions recent events. Perhaps he simply wishes to reassure loved ones that he remains safe. Across the empire, countless such letters are written. Some survive even today, tiny glimpses into ordinary lives lived long ago. One fascinating aspect of Roman military service is its length. Imagine committing 20 years or more to army life. That is not unusual. Many legionaries spend decades serving Rome. Entire adult lives unfold within the military system. The legion becomes more than a workplace. It becomes a community, a family of sorts. The men train together, march together, fight together, and sometimes die together. These bonds can become incredibly strong. Imagine standing beside fellow soldiers during a difficult campaign. You share hardships, danger, exhaustion. The experience creates trust. Each person depends upon the others. The success of the unit depends upon cooperation. This spirit helps explain why Roman legions become so effective. They function as teams rather than collections of individuals. Every soldier understands his role. Every soldier contributes. Imagine a legion preparing for inspection. Armor is polished. Equipment is examined. Standards stand proudly above the assembled ranks. The soldiers know they represent Rome. Their appearance matters. Their conduct matters. Everything reflects upon the legion's reputation. And reputation is important. Some legions become famous throughout the empire. Their names inspire confidence. Their records command respect. Among these respected units stands the 9th Legion. By the time our story truly begins, the 9th already possesses a long and distinguished history. Its soldiers have fought in major campaigns, served notable commanders, earned a reputation for courage and endurance. The Legion is not new. It is not inexperienced. It has survived challenges that might have destroyed lesser units. Imagine the pride a legionary might feel serving within such a formation. The standards carried before him represent generations of soldiers, victories won long before his birth, traditions passed from one generation to the next. The legion possesses an identity beyond any individual soldier. Men come and go. The legion endures, or at least that is how it appears. For now, the 9th Legion marches confidently through history. Its future seems secure. Its reputation remains strong. No one imagines that centuries later historians will debate its fate. No one imagines that the legion itself will become a mystery. As evening settles across the Roman camp, imagine the legionaries preparing for sleep. Campfires flicker gently in the darkness. The sounds of conversation gradually fade. Above them, stars fill the night sky. Tomorrow will bring another march, another assignment, another chapter in the long history of Rome. And for the 9th Legion, that history stretches back far beyond the frontiers of Britain, far beyond the empire's northern borders, back to an age of civil wars, ambitious generals, and one of the most famous figures in history, Julius Caesar. Because the story of the 9th Legion begins long before it became lost. It begins during the final years of the Roman Republic, when Rome itself stood on the edge of transformation. As we continue our journey tonight, let us travel backward in time, far beyond the Roman forts of Britain, far beyond the misty frontiers where the 9th Legion would one day become famous, back to an age when Rome was not yet an empire, an age of political rivalries, civil wars, and ambitious generals seeking glory. It is here that the story of the 9th Legion truly begins. Imagine Rome during the 1st century before Christ. The city is already powerful. Its influence stretches across the Mediterranean. Its armies have conquered vast territories. Yet beneath the appearance of strength lies growing instability. Political factions compete for power. Wealthy leaders seek influence. Military commanders gain loyal followers. The Republic, which has governed Rome for centuries, begins showing signs of strain. Imagine walking through the crowded streets of Rome around 60 BC. Merchants call out from busy markets. Senators debate in public buildings. Citizens gather to discuss politics. Everywhere, people sense that change is coming. No one knows exactly what form that change will take, yet the future feels uncertain. Among the rising figures of this era stands a man whose name remains famous more than 2,000 years later, Julius Caesar. Imagine Caesar as a young politician and military commander, intelligent, charismatic, ambitious. He possesses an extraordinary ability to inspire loyalty, both among ordinary citizens and among soldiers. Over time, his influence grows steadily. Eventually, he receives command of military campaigns in Gaul, a region that roughly corresponds to modern France and parts of neighboring countries. The assignment will transform both Caesar's career and Roman history. Imagine the vast landscapes of ancient Gaul. Dense forests stretch toward the horizon. Rivers carve paths through fertile valleys. Numerous tribes inhabit the region. Some welcome Roman influence. Others resist fiercely. For Caesar, the territory offers both opportunity and danger. And among the forces serving under him is a legion that will later become known as the IX Hispana. Imagine thousands of Roman soldiers preparing for campaign. Armor gleams in the morning light. Standards rise above the assembled ranks. Officers move through the formation. Orders are issued. Soon the army begins marching. Ahead lies uncertainty. Behind lies Rome. The campaigns in Gaul become some of the most famous military operations in history. For years, Caesar's legions move across the region, fighting battles, building fortifications, crossing rivers, expanding Roman influence. The soldiers endure hardship after hardship, long marches, harsh weather, dangerous encounters, yet they continue moving forward. Imagine being a legionary during these campaigns. You wake before dawn, march all day, help construct camps each evening, remain ready for battle at any moment. The routine is exhausting, yet the rewards can be significant. Victory brings prestige, financial rewards, opportunities for advancement. Many soldiers willingly endure the hardships because they believe in the success of the campaign and they believe in Caesar. One reason the Ninth Legion becomes respected is its reliability. Again and again, it performs difficult assignments. Again and again, it remains effective under pressure. Roman commanders value such qualities enormously. A dependable legion becomes a valuable asset. Imagine a battle line forming somewhere in Gaul. The air feels tense. Across an open field stand opposing forces. The Roman soldiers wait calmly behind their shields. Years of training have prepared them for this moment. Commands are issued. The line advances. History records many such battles during Caesar's campaigns, and the Ninth Legion participates in several important ones. The details vary, the locations change, yet one pattern remains consistent. The Legion survives. The Legion adapts. The Legion endures. Imagine sitting beside a campfire after a successful campaign. The soldiers are tired, yet satisfied. Stories are exchanged. Victories are remembered. The hardships of the march seem worthwhile. The Legion's reputation continues growing. At this stage, no one imagines that centuries later people will still discuss its history. For the soldiers, the future feels immediate. Tomorrow's march, next season's campaign, the next challenge waiting beyond the horizon. Yet history has larger plans. As Caesar's success grows, so does his power. And eventually, power creates conflict. Imagine receiving news that political tensions are rising in Rome. Leaders argue, alliances fracture, the Republic grows increasingly unstable. Caesar now commands experienced legions deeply loyal to him. Many politicians view this situation with concern. The stage is set for one of history's most famous confrontations. In 49 BC, Caesar crosses the Rubicon River, a decision that effectively begins a civil war. The event becomes legendary. Even today, the phrase crossing the Rubicon symbolizes a point of no return. Imagine the moment. A Roman general leads his army across a small river. The action appears simple, yet its consequences will reshape the Roman world. The Ninth Legion follows Caesar, as do many other units. The soldiers march not against foreign enemies, but against fellow Romans. Civil wars are often among the most painful conflicts because they divide people who once stood together. Imagine the uncertainty felt by ordinary legionaries. The enemy is no longer an unfamiliar tribe beyond the frontier. The enemy consists of other Roman armies, people who speak the same language, follow the same customs, serve the same state, yet the conflict proceeds. And once again, the Ninth Legion proves itself reliable. Battle after battle, campaign after campaign, the Legion remains an important part of Caesar's military strength. Eventually, Caesar emerges victorious. The Republic begins transforming into something new. The foundations of the Roman Empire slowly take shape. The Ninth Legion survives the transition. Many other military units do as well, yet survival itself becomes part of the Legion's identity. Again and again, it endures periods of uncertainty. Again and again, it emerges intact. Imagine an elderly veteran, years later. Perhaps he sits beside a fire recalling his younger days. He remembers marching through Gaul, crossing rivers, following Caesar, witnessing events that changed history. The memories feel distant now, yet the Legion continues. New recruits join. Old soldiers retire. Generations pass. The standards remain. The eagle remains. The Ninth Legion marches onward, and that long journey will eventually carry it far from Rome, far from Gaul, far from the Mediterranean world, toward a distant island at the very edge of civilization, a place the Romans consider mysterious, remote, and often troublesome, a place called Britannia. As the evening deepens around our campfire, imagine the veterans of Caesar's campaigns looking toward the future. They cannot know where the Legion's path will lead. They cannot know that one day it will become one of history's greatest mysteries. For now, the Ninth Legion remains strong, its reputation secure, its future seemingly bright. Yet beyond the horizon, another frontier awaits, a frontier of rain-soaked forests, ancient tribes, and endless uncertainty, the island of Britain. And it is there that the next chapter of our story begins. As we continue our journey tonight, the story of the Ninth Legion carries us farther from the familiar lands of Gaul and deeper into one of the most distant corners of the Roman world, an island surrounded by cold seas, a land of rolling hills, dense forests, and windswept coastlines, a place that seemed mysterious even to the Romans, Britain, or, as the Romans called it, Britannia. Imagine standing on the shores of northern Gaul during the 1st century AD. Across the narrow stretch of water known today as the English Channel lies Britain. The island is visible only on clear days, a distant shape on the horizon. To Roman eyes, it appears both close and far away, close in distance, far in experience. For centuries, stories about Britain have circulated throughout the Roman world. Merchants speak of trade opportunities. Sailors describe dangerous waters. Soldiers tell tales of fierce tribal warriors. The island occupies a unique place in Roman imagination, part reality, part legend. Imagine listening to travelers discussing Britain in a Roman tavern. Some describe rich farmland. Others describe endless rain. One claims the forests are so thick that sunlight barely reaches the ground. Another insists strange customs exist there. The stories vary, yet they all agree on one thing. Britain feels different. Different from Rome, different from Gaul, different from the Mediterranean world. Even Julius Caesar had visited the island decades earlier. His expeditions proved that Britain could be reached, but they did not establish permanent Roman control. For many years afterward, Britain remained beyond the empire's direct authority. Then everything changed. Imagine the year AD 43. The Emperor Claudius sits upon the Roman throne. Unlike Julius Caesar, Claudius is already ruler of a vast empire. Yet he seeks something many Roman leaders desire: military glory. A successful conquest would strengthen his reputation and demonstrate Roman power. Britain becomes the target. Preparations begin. Ships are assembled. Supplies are gathered. Legions receive orders. Soon, one of the most ambitious military operations in Roman history is underway. Imagine the Roman invasion fleet preparing to depart. Hundreds of vessels gather along the coast. Soldiers board transports carrying equipment and supplies. Officers review plans. The atmosphere is tense but optimistic. Across the water lies uncertainty and opportunity. The crossing itself is challenging. Imagine standing aboard a Roman transport ship. Waves roll beneath the vessel. Wind fills the sails. The coastline gradually disappears behind you. Ahead lies Britain, a frontier unlike any the Romans have encountered before. Eventually, the fleet reaches its destination. Roman soldiers step onto British soil. The conquest begins. Imagine the first encounters between Roman forces and local tribes. The landscape feels unfamiliar. The climate feels different. The roads and cities common throughout much of the empire do not yet exist here. Instead, Roman soldiers encounter scattered settlements, forests, rivers, and tribal territories. The campaign requires patience, determination, and considerable military effort. Victory does not arrive overnight. Over the following years, Roman armies push steadily deeper into Britain. Forts are constructed, roads are built, settlements emerge, Roman influence spreads, yet resistance never completely disappears. Imagine a legion marching through Britain for the first time. Rain falls steadily from gray skies. Mud clings to sandals. Forests stretch across the countryside. The terrain feels challenging compared to many regions of the empire. Yet the soldiers adapt. Roman armies are remarkably flexible. They build bridges when rivers block their path, construct roads where none exist, raise forts wherever security demands. Wherever a legion goes, Rome follows. And eventually, the Ninth Legion becomes one of the military units stationed in Britain. Imagine arriving at a newly established Roman fort. Wooden walls surround the camp. Guard towers overlook the surrounding countryside. Inside, soldiers follow familiar routines: training, maintenance, patrols. The fort feels like a small piece of Rome transported across the sea. This becomes one of the defining features of Roman frontier life. The empire does not merely conquer territory, it creates infrastructure. Roads connect settlements, markets emerge, trade expands. Gradually, parts of Britain begin changing. Roman customs blend with local traditions. New communities develop. Yet beyond the frontier, many tribal groups remain independent, and some remain hostile. Imagine standing atop the walls of a Roman fort at sunset. Beyond the fort lies open countryside. Rolling hills fade into the distance. Smoke rises from distant settlements. Some belong to allies, others do not. The frontier remains uncertain. Roman control is never absolute. The farther north soldiers travel, the more challenging conditions become. Imagine marching through northern Britain. The weather shifts rapidly. Clouds gather without warning. Rain sweeps across the landscape. The hills grow steeper, the forests denser. Travel becomes more difficult. Yet the Romans continue advancing, driven by the belief that every frontier can eventually be controlled. Many soldiers spend years serving in Britain. Some spend entire careers there. Imagine a legionary who arrived as a young recruit. Over time, he learns the landscape, the weather, the local customs, the names of rivers and hills. Britain gradually becomes familiar, almost a second home, yet it always retains an element of unpredictability, a sense that the frontier remains unfinished. The Ninth Legion becomes deeply connected to this world. Its soldiers build forts, guard roads, patrol remote regions, participate in campaigns against tribes resisting Roman authority. The Legion develops a long history in Britain, a history that will eventually become central to the mystery surrounding its disappearance. But for now, those events remain in the future. At this stage, the Ninth Legion is thriving. Its reputation remains strong. Its duties remain clear. The soldiers have no reason to believe that historians will one day debate their fate. Imagine an evening inside a Roman fort somewhere in Britain. Rain taps softly against wooden roofs. Campfires glow within the walls. Soldiers share meals and stories. Beyond the fort, darkness settles across the countryside. The frontier appears peaceful, yet appearances can be deceiving, because Britain is not fully conquered, not yet. And within a few decades, one of the greatest uprisings in Roman history will erupt across the province. Cities will burn, armies will be destroyed, and the Ninth Legion itself will suffer one of the most devastating defeats in its long history. The storm is gathering. The frontier grows restless, and the story of the lost Ninth Legion is about to enter a far more dangerous chapter. As we continue our journey tonight, the Roman frontier in Britain appears stable. The roads are functioning, the forts are occupied, the towns are growing. Roman authority stretches across much of the island. To many observers, the conquest seems successful, yet beneath the surface, resentment remains. Not everyone welcomes Roman rule. Not every tribe accepts foreign authority. And sometimes, even the mightiest empire discovers that conquest is easier than control. Imagine Britain in the year AD 60. Nearly 2 decades have passed since the Roman invasion. Across southern Britain, Roman influence continues expanding. New settlements appear, taxes are collected, Roman laws are introduced. To officials in distant Rome, progress seems steady. But among many native Britons, anger quietly grows. Imagine a local tribal leader looking upon a newly built Roman settlement. The roads, the forts, the officials, the soldiers. Everything serves as a reminder that the old way of life is changing. For some people, adaptation feels possible. For others, resistance seems inevitable. And soon resistance will arrive in dramatic fashion. At the center of the coming storm stands a woman whose name remains famous nearly 2,000 years later. Boudica. Imagine Eastern Britain. A kingdom known as the Iceni occupies much of the region. For years, its rulers have maintained a complicated relationship with Rome, not fully independent, not fully controlled. A delicate balance exists. Then that balance collapses. Historical accounts describe disputes involving property, power, and treatment by Roman authorities. The exact details remain debated, yet the outcome is clear. A rebellion begins, and it spreads rapidly. Imagine messengers traveling between tribal communities. News moves from village to village. Leaders gather, warriors prepare. The desire to resist Roman rule ignites across large portions of Britain. What begins as local unrest soon transforms into something much larger, a full-scale uprising. Imagine the Roman officials stationed in Britain receiving reports. At first, the situation may not appear catastrophic. Small disturbances are not unusual. Frontiers often experience periods of unrest, yet this rebellion grows with astonishing speed. Soon, entire regions are involved. Thousands of warriors join the cause. The province stands on the edge of crisis. Imagine the countryside alive with movement. Columns of warriors gather beneath tribal banners. Villages support the uprising. Roads once used by Roman troops now carry news of rebellion. The atmosphere changes quickly. The frontier that once seemed stable suddenly feels uncertain, dangerous, explosive. And it is here that the Ninth Legion enters one of the most dramatic moments in its history. Imagine a Roman commander receiving urgent reports. Settlements are under attack. Communications are disrupted. Roman authority is weakening. Action must be taken immediately. The Ninth Legion is ordered to respond. The soldiers prepare for another campaign. They have faced challenges before. The Legion has survived difficult battles throughout its long history. Few have reason to doubt its ability. Yet the situation unfolding across Britain is unlike anything they expected. Imagine the Ninth Legion marching toward the conflict. Armor gleams beneath gray skies. Standards rise above the formation. The soldiers move with confidence born from years of training. They are professional soldiers, veterans of frontier service, disciplined and experienced. But experience alone cannot guarantee success. The rebellion has become far larger than Roman commanders initially realized. Historical sources suggest that as the legion advanced, it encountered overwhelming opposition. Imagine the scene: a Roman column moving through unfamiliar terrain, the weather cool, the landscape open before them. Then suddenly, warriors appear, thousands of them, perhaps far more than expected. The battle begins. The details are difficult to reconstruct with complete certainty. Ancient accounts often contain exaggerations. Numbers are debated, descriptions vary. Yet one fact appears clear: the Ninth Legion suffers terribly. Imagine the chaos of battle, commands shouted above the noise, shields collide, weapons flash, dust and confusion fill the air. The Legion fights with determination, but the circumstances are unfavorable. The enemy is numerous, the attack is fierce, losses mount rapidly. For perhaps the first time in generations, the proud Ninth Legion faces disaster. Imagine surviving soldiers attempting to regroup. The battle line collapses. Retreat becomes necessary. The situation grows desperate. Many men do not escape. Many never return. Ancient historians describe devastating casualties. The exact number remains uncertain, yet the impact is unmistakable. The Ninth Legion has suffered one of the worst defeats in its history. Imagine the aftermath. The battlefield grows quiet. Smoke drifts across the landscape. The survivors gather what remains of the force. Exhaustion mixes with disbelief. The Legion still exists, but it has been badly damaged. Its reputation suddenly feels vulnerable, its future uncertain. Meanwhile, the rebellion continues spreading. Roman settlements are attacked. Several towns are destroyed. Ancient sources describe widespread devastation. For a brief moment, it appears possible that Roman control of Britain may collapse entirely. Imagine news reaching Rome. Officials read alarming reports. Governors request reinforcements. Questions arise. Can the province be saved? Can order be restored? The empire faces one of its greatest challenges in Britain. Yet Rome possesses enormous resources. Additional troops arrive. Experienced commanders take charge. Gradually, the situation begins changing. The rebellion that once seemed unstoppable encounters increasingly organized resistance. Imagine Roman forces regrouping. New plans are developed. Fresh soldiers enter the province. The empire prepares its response. Eventually, a decisive confrontation occurs. The rebellion is defeated. Roman authority survives, Britain remains part of the empire, but the cost has been significant. Entire communities have been devastated, thousands have died, and the Ninth Legion bears lasting scars. Imagine the Legion months later. The standards still fly, the soldiers still serve, yet many familiar faces are gone. The losses are impossible to ignore. New recruits arrive to replace fallen comrades. The unit begins rebuilding. Training resumes, patrols continue, life moves forward. The Legion survives once again. This resilience becomes part of its identity. Time after time, the Ninth endures hardship. Time after time, it recovers. And for many years afterward, it continues serving in Britain. Yet historians looking back often pause at this moment, because the defeat during Boudica's revolt demonstrates something important. The Ninth Legion was not invincible. Even one of Rome's respected military units could suffer catastrophic losses. The frontier remained dangerous. The future remained uncertain. And perhaps, just perhaps, the seeds of a later mystery were already being planted. As evening settles over Roman Britain, imagine the rebuilt legion resting inside a frontier fort. Rain falls softly beyond the walls. Campfires glow in the darkness. The survivors share stories of battles fought and friends lost. The rebellion is over. The province is secure, for now. Yet farther north, beyond the limits of Roman control, another frontier waits. A frontier of wild hills, remote valleys, and fiercely independent tribes. A frontier that will soon draw the Ninth Legion deeper into the unknown. And it is there, in the mist-covered north of Britain, that our mystery begins to grow even darker. As we continue our journey tonight, let us travel farther north, beyond the comfortable Roman towns, beyond the roads and villas of southern Britain, beyond the lands where Roman authority feels secure. Ahead lies a different world, a colder world, a wilder world, a frontier that challenges even the greatest empire of its age. Imagine Britain in the late 1st century, AD. The Roman Empire controls much of the island. Its forts guard important routes. Its soldiers patrol the countryside. Its officials collect taxes and enforce laws. Yet the farther north one travels, the less certain Roman authority becomes. The landscape itself begins to change. Imagine leaving a Roman settlement at dawn. At first, the roads are familiar. Villages appear regularly. Fields stretch across gentle hills. But gradually, the signs of Roman civilization begin to fade. The roads become rougher. The settlements grow smaller. The wilderness grows larger. Ahead lies the north, a region that Roman writers often describe with a mixture of fascination and frustration. Imagine standing atop a hill and looking toward the horizon. The land seems endless. Rolling moorlands stretch beneath wide skies. Dark forests cover distant valleys. Rivers cut through rugged terrain. Mist drifts across the landscape. The scenery is beautiful, yet it also feels unpredictable, untamed. To Roman commanders, this environment presents a serious challenge, because controlling territory requires more than conquering it. It requires maintaining order, building roads, moving troops, supplying forts, and all of these tasks become more difficult in the north. Imagine a Roman patrol traveling through the frontier. The weather changes rapidly. One moment the sky is clear, the next rain sweeps across the hills. Visibility disappears. The landscape itself seems determined to resist easy travel. For local tribes, these conditions are familiar. For Roman soldiers, they often prove frustrating. The frontier favors those who know it best, and in northern Britain, that usually means the tribes. Imagine a small Roman fort standing alone in the wilderness. Wooden walls surround the camp. Watchtowers overlook the surrounding countryside. Inside, legionaries perform familiar duties. Outside, uncertainty remains. The nearest Roman settlement may be days away. Reinforcements may take time to arrive. The soldiers understand they are living at the edge of the empire, the edge of the known world. The Ninth Legion spends many years serving in such places. Imagine the Legion gradually becoming accustomed to frontier life. The soldiers learn local geography. They memorize river crossings. They identify potential dangers. The wilderness that once felt strange slowly becomes familiar. Yet familiarity never eliminates risk. The North remains unpredictable, and unpredictability often creates opportunity for resistance. Imagine the tribal communities living beyond Roman control. They know the hills, the forests, the hidden valleys. Generations have lived here, long before Roman ships crossed the sea, long before Roman roads appeared. The arrival of the empire changes many things, yet it does not erase local identities. Many tribes continue resisting Roman expansion, sometimes openly, sometimes quietly. The frontier remains a place of tension. Imagine a Roman commander studying a map. The empire's territory appears clearly marked. Forts are indicated. Roads are shown. Yet beyond those boundaries lie regions Rome does not fully control. Blank spaces remain, and Roman leaders rarely feel comfortable with blank spaces. The desire to push farther north grows steadily. Each generation of commanders hopes to succeed where previous efforts have struggled. Some achieve temporary victories. Others encounter setbacks. The frontier refuses to become simple. Imagine a military campaign moving through northern Britain. Thousands of soldiers march across difficult terrain. Engineers build roads and bridges. Supply wagons follow behind. Everything requires effort. Everything requires planning. The farther the army travels, the longer its supply lines become. And long supply lines create vulnerability. The local tribes understand this well. Imagine a narrow valley hidden beneath morning mist. A Roman column moves cautiously through the landscape. The terrain limits visibility. The soldiers remain alert because danger may exist beyond the next ridge, beyond the next forest, beyond the next river bend. Frontier warfare often differs from the large battles Romans prefer. Instead of open fields and organized formations, conflict frequently involves surprise attacks, ambushes, raids, quick strikes followed by rapid retreats. The terrain itself becomes a weapon, and the tribes of northern Britain know how to use it. Imagine a legionary standing watch during the night. The camp lies quiet behind him. Beyond the walls stretches darkness. The wind moves through distant hills. Occasionally, strange sounds drift from the wilderness. Perhaps an animal, perhaps something else. The soldier cannot know. The frontier often feels mysterious, even unsettling. Many Roman troops stationed in Britain likely experienced such moments. Far from home, far from Rome, living in landscapes unlike anything they had known before. Yet they continued serving, year after year. The Ninth Legion in particular became closely associated with northern Britain. Its soldiers guarded the frontier, built fortifications, patrolled dangerous regions. The Legion became one of Rome's primary tools for maintaining order. And because of this role, later generations would develop a powerful theory, a theory that eventually became famous. Imagine historians centuries later examining ancient records. They notice something unusual. The Ninth Legion appears frequently in Britain. Then eventually it disappears. Questions emerge. Could the answer lie here, in the wild north, among the misty hills and remote valleys? Did the Legion perhaps suffer a catastrophic defeat while campaigning beyond the frontier? The idea is certainly dramatic. A Roman legion destroyed by northern tribes, its soldiers swallowed by the wilderness, its standards lost forever. The theory would inspire novels, films, and countless discussions among historians. Yet for now, it remains only a possibility. Our story has not yet reached that point. The Ninth Legion still exists, the soldiers still march, the standards still fly proudly above the ranks. No one yet realizes that future generations will wonder whether these frontier lands became their final resting place. Imagine sunset across northern Britain. The hills glow softly beneath fading light. Mist gathers in distant valleys. A Roman fort stands against the wilderness. Campfires flicker behind its walls. The soldiers prepare for another night. Tomorrow will bring new patrols, new challenges, new uncertainties. The frontier remains restless, and somewhere beyond those hills, the mystery of the Ninth Legion is quietly taking shape. Because although the Legion survived Boudica's rebellion in years of frontier service, its story is far from over. In fact, some of the most important clues have yet to appear. Clues hidden within inscriptions, ancient records, and a city that would become one of Rome's most important strongholds in Britain, a city known today as York. And it is there that the trail of the Ninth Legion begins to grow strangely faint. As we continue our journey tonight, the winds of northern Britain grow colder, the hills become steeper, the forest darker, and the frontier more uncertain. Yet despite the challenges, the Ninth Legion remains an important part of Rome's military presence in Britain. The soldiers continue building roads, guarding forts, patrolling distant territories. To all appearances, the Legion remains strong, but history has a curious habit of becoming quieter before a mystery begins. Imagine the Roman city of Eboracum. Today we know it as York, but during Roman times it is one of the most important military centers in Britain. Roads converge here, supplies arrive here, commanders plan campaigns here. For many years, Eboracum serves as a vital base for Roman operations in the north. Imagine approaching the city on a clear morning. Stone walls rise above the landscape. Watchtowers overlook the surrounding countryside. Inside, merchants trade goods from across the empire. Officials conduct business. Soldiers march through orderly streets. The city feels prosperous, secure, Roman. Among the military units stationed here is the Ninth Legion. For generations, its presence helps maintain order along the frontier. Imagine the Legion's fortress inside the city. Rows of barracks house hundreds of soldiers. Workshops repair equipment. Storehouses contain supplies. Training grounds echo with shouted commands. The rhythms of military life continue day after day, much as they have for centuries. The soldiers of the Ninth Legion probably see themselves as part of something permanent, an institution larger than any individual, larger than any generation. The Legion has survived civil wars, foreign campaigns, rebellions, hardships beyond counting. Why would tomorrow be any different? Yet history rarely announces major changes in advance. Often they begin quietly, almost invisibly. Imagine an archaeologist working in York nearly 2,000 years later. The excavation proceeds carefully. Layer after layer of history emerges from the earth. Fragments of pottery, coins, tools, inscriptions. Each discovery provides another glimpse into the Roman past. Among these discoveries are records connected to the Ninth Legion. The evidence confirms something important. The Legion was definitely here. It occupied York. It played a significant role in Roman Britain. For historians, these discoveries are valuable because they provide certainty, and certainty is often rare when studying ancient history. Imagine holding a stone inscription carved by Roman hands. The letters remain visible despite the passage of centuries. A name, a unit, a dedication, tiny fragments of information surviving across time. These inscriptions become some of the strongest evidence available to modern researchers. They help establish where the legion was and when it was there. Yet eventually something strange begins to happen. The evidence grows thinner. Imagine following a trail through a forest. At first the path is obvious, the direction clear. Then gradually the tracks become harder to see. The trail fades, the signs become less frequent, the certainty begins slipping away. This is essentially what happens with the historical record of the Ninth Legion. For many years, references appear regularly. Then, they become increasingly difficult to find. The trail grows faint. Imagine a Roman official reviewing military records. The empire keeps careful accounts. Units are assigned to provinces. Supplies are distributed. Troops are moved where needed. The system is extensive. Yet despite this bureaucracy, gaps still exist. Documents are lost. Records disappear. Time erases information. And within those gaps, mysteries emerge. One of the last widely accepted pieces of evidence places the Ninth Legion in York around AD 108. At that point, the Legion appears active, present, functioning normally. Nothing suggests an impending disaster. Nothing hints at an extraordinary event. Imagine the soldiers themselves. Some repair walls, others stand guard. Many perform routine duties. Life proceeds as usual. No one knows they are approaching the edge of history. No one knows future generations will search desperately for clues about their fate. For them, tomorrow remains ordinary. Yet after this period, references to the Ninth Legion become surprisingly scarce. Imagine historians centuries later examining surviving records. They search military documents, official inscriptions, ancient writings. Again and again, the same question arises. Where did the Ninth Legion go? The answer proves frustratingly difficult to find. At first, some scholars assume the explanation must be simple. Perhaps the Legion was renamed, perhaps records were lost, perhaps evidence simply remains undiscovered. Yet the mystery refuses to disappear. And as more research takes place, curiosity grows. Imagine sitting in a library surrounded by ancient texts. Researchers compare documents from different regions of the empire. They examine military lists, official records, archaeological discoveries. Each new clue seems promising, yet no single clue solves the puzzle. The Legion appears clearly, then gradually fades from view. The disappearance feels unusual because Roman legions were important institutions. They were not small groups easily overlooked. A legion contained thousands of soldiers, numerous officers, significant resources. Their movements generally left traces. Yet in the case of the Ninth, the trail remains surprisingly incomplete. Imagine a campfire discussion among historians. One researcher believes the answer lies in Britain. Another suspects the Legion was transferred elsewhere. A third argues that missing records may explain everything. The debate continues year after year, decade after decade. The mystery survives because the evidence allows multiple possibilities, and each possibility tells a different story. Perhaps the Legion met disaster in the north. Perhaps it served elsewhere in the empire. Perhaps it experienced a fate far less dramatic than later legends suggest. At this point in our journey, we simply do not know. Imagine standing atop the walls of Roman York at sunset. The city glows beneath the fading light. Smoke rises from countless hearths. Soldiers move through the streets below. Everything appears stable, orderly, secure. Yet hidden beneath that appearance is a mystery already beginning to unfold. The Ninth Legion remains present. for now, but soon its trail will grow colder. Soon historians will begin searching for answers. And soon one of the most famous theories in Roman history will emerge. A theory involving a lost army, a violent frontier, and a destruction so complete that it echoes through the centuries. As darkness settles across Roman Britain, imagine the standards of the Ninth Legion fluttering gently above the fortress walls. The eagle still stands proudly. The soldiers still serve faithfully. Yet beyond the northern frontier, uncertainty waits. And somewhere within that uncertainty may lie the answer historians have sought for generations. Because the next chapter of our story takes us to the very heart of the mystery itself. The moment when the Ninth Legion appears to vanish from history. As we continue our journey tonight, we arrive at the heart of the mystery. The question that has puzzled historians, archaeologists, writers, and readers for generations. What happened to the Ninth Legion? For much of its history, the Legion appears clearly in the historical record. It serves Rome faithfully. It fights battles, builds forts, marches across frontiers. Then, quite suddenly, certainty begins to fade. Imagine reading a long, detailed book. Page after page tells a clear story. Then, near the end, several chapters are missing. The beginning remains intact, the middle survives, but the ending has vanished. That is essentially the challenge historians face when studying the Ninth Legion. The story starts clearly, then the trail grows cold. Imagine Roman Britain in the early 2nd century. The empire remains powerful. Its armies remain active. Its frontiers continue demanding attention. The Ninth Legion is still stationed in the province, at least as far as we can tell. Then something changes, not necessarily overnight, not necessarily through a dramatic event, but gradually references to the Legion disappear. Imagine an ancient clerk recording military information, names of units, locations, assignments. The records continue year after year. Then one familiar name stops appearing. At first, perhaps no one notices. Empires manage countless details. Units move. Commanders change. Administrative records evolve. Yet centuries later, historians notice. And they begin asking questions. Imagine an archaeologist uncovering fragments of Roman history. An inscription here. A military diploma there. A piece of evidence emerges from the earth after nearly 2,000 years. Each discovery helps reconstruct the past. Yet when it comes to the Ninth Legion, the discoveries seem incomplete, like pieces from a puzzle with several important sections missing. And whenever evidence is incomplete, theories begin to flourish. One theory soon becomes especially popular, perhaps because it is dramatic, perhaps because it feels plausible, or perhaps because it captures the imagination so perfectly. Imagine the wild northern frontier of Britain, beyond the main centers of Roman control, beyond the fortified roads, beyond the comfortable settlements. The land remains difficult, remote, often hostile. Roman armies campaign there repeatedly, yet complete control remains elusive. The tribes of the north continue resisting again and again. Imagine a Roman commander receiving troubling reports. Raids have occurred. Forts are threatened. The frontier grows unstable. Action is required. A legion is ordered northward. The soldiers prepare. Standards rise above the ranks. The march begins, and somewhere beyond the frontier, disaster awaits. At least, that is how the theory unfolds. According to this idea, the Ninth Legion may have been destroyed during a campaign in northern Britain, perhaps ambushed, perhaps overwhelmed, perhaps isolated, far from support. The details vary depending upon who tells the story, yet the central concept remains the same. The Legion marched north and never returned. Imagine the scene. A Roman column winding through rugged terrain, the weather cold, mist drifting across distant hills. The soldiers remain alert, yet the landscape favors their enemies. The local tribes know every valley, every river crossing, every hidden approach. The Romans possess discipline. The tribes possess familiarity, and sometimes familiarity can be a powerful advantage. Imagine the legion entering increasingly remote territory. Supply lines stretch behind them. Communication becomes more difficult. The wilderness grows larger. The empire feels farther away. Then something happens. Perhaps an ambush, perhaps a series of attacks, perhaps a larger confrontation lost to history. Whatever the cause, the result is catastrophic. The legion is destroyed, its standards captured, its soldiers killed, its history ended. It is a dramatic image, and for many years it becomes the most popular explanation. Writers embrace it, novelists expand upon it, readers remember it. The idea of an entire Roman legion disappearing in the mists of northern Britain feels almost irresistible. Imagine campfires burning beneath stormy skies, warriors gathering in hidden valleys, Roman soldiers marching toward an uncertain fate. The story possesses all the elements of legend, yet historians must be careful, because appealing stories are not always accurate stories. Imagine examining the evidence closely. The problem quickly becomes apparent. While the theory sounds convincing, direct proof remains surprisingly limited. No ancient historian clearly states that the Ninth Legion was destroyed in Britain. No surviving Roman document describes such a disaster. No battlefield has been conclusively identified. The theory is possible, but possibility is not certainty, and historians prefer certainty whenever they can find it. Imagine sitting in a museum surrounded by artifacts from Roman Britain, fragments of armor, weapons, inscriptions, coins. Each object tells part of the story, yet none provide a definitive answer. The silence becomes almost as important as the evidence itself. The records simply do not say what many people wish they would say. This creates a fascinating situation. The destruction in Britain theory remains plausible, but it remains only one theory among several. And as new discoveries emerge, alternative explanations begin attracting attention. Imagine researchers uncovering evidence suggesting that Roman military units moved frequently throughout the empire. Legions were not permanently tied to one province. They could be transferred, reassigned, sent wherever they were needed. Suddenly, another possibility appears. What if the Ninth Legion did not perish in Britain at all? What if it left Britain entirely? The idea changes everything. The mystery grows larger. The search expands beyond the island itself, across Europe, across the Mediterranean, toward distant frontiers where Rome faced other enemies, other wars, other dangers, and perhaps another fate entirely. Imagine the soldiers of the Ninth Legion themselves. They know nothing of future theories, nothing of future debates. They simply follow orders, perform duties, live ordinary lives within an extraordinary empire, whether they marched north into danger or east toward another frontier. They could not know they were becoming one of history's greatest mysteries. As evening settles across Roman Britain, imagine a lonely frontier road disappearing into the darkness. The last traces of daylight fade from the sky. The hills grow quiet. The camps prepare for another night. Somewhere ahead, the trail of the Ninth Legion continues, but the path is becoming harder to follow, the clues more uncertain, the mystery deeper. Because in our next chapter, we will explore a very different possibility, a possibility that takes us far from Britain, far from the northern frontier, toward the distant eastern provinces of the Roman Empire, where another war may have awaited the soldiers of the Ninth Legion, and where some historians believe the true ending of their story may finally be found. As we continue our journey tonight, let us leave the misty hills of Britain behind. The frontier roads fade into the distance. The northern winds grow quiet, and our attention turns eastward, far beyond the shores of Britannia, far beyond the forests of Gaul, toward lands where the Roman Empire faced some of its most dangerous rivals. Because while many people imagine the Ninth Legion disappearing somewhere in Britain, another theory tells a very different story. A story that stretches across continents, a story that carries us toward deserts, mountains, and distant battlefields. Imagine a map of the Roman Empire during the 2nd century. The empire covers an enormous territory. Britain lies at one edge. Yet equally important frontiers exist elsewhere, along the Rhine, along the Danube, and especially in the east. There, Rome faces powerful enemies, unlike the tribal groups of Britain. Kingdoms with armies, cities, resources, and ambitions of their own. Among these rivals, one stands above the rest, the Parthian Empire. Imagine the eastern frontier. Vast deserts stretch beneath endless skies. Caravans travel ancient trade routes. Fortified cities rise from the landscape. The atmosphere feels entirely different from Britain. The weather is warmer, the terrain more open, the culture's older. This is a world shaped by centuries of commerce and conflict. And Rome's eastern frontier remains one of the most important regions in the empire. Imagine a Roman commander studying reports from the east. The frontier remains unstable. Tensions rise and fall. Skirmishes occur. Diplomats negotiate. Armies prepare. The situation requires constant attention. Whenever serious threats emerge, Rome often transfers troops where they are needed most. This includes legions. Imagine receiving orders to leave Britain. A legion that has spent decades guarding one frontier suddenly prepares for another. The soldiers pack equipment. Standards are gathered. The long journey begins. Such transfers occur throughout Roman history. Military units move wherever circumstances demand. And this possibility creates an intriguing question. What if the Ninth Legion simply left Britain? Imagine historians examining inscriptions discovered far from Britain. Some pieces of evidence suggest military activity connected to the Ninth Legion beyond the island. The clues are limited, often fragmentary, yet they raise important questions. If the Legion appears elsewhere, perhaps it was never destroyed in Britain at all. Perhaps the mystery lies somewhere else. Imagine the soldiers of the Ninth Legion marching eastward. The journey takes months. Roads stretch endlessly ahead. New landscapes appear, new cultures, new challenges. The soldiers adapt as Roman soldiers always do. The empire is vast. Many legionaries spend their careers moving between provinces. To them, relocation would not seem unusual. Yet for future historians, such a transfer could dramatically change the story. Imagine arriving at an eastern frontier fortress. The architecture differs from Britain. The climate differs. The people differ. Everything feels unfamiliar. Yet the duties remain the same. Patrols, construction projects, military readiness. Life in a legion continues regardless of location. One possibility places the Ninth Legion near regions troubled by conflict during the 2nd century. The empire faces numerous challenges during this period. Some occur along the eastern frontier. Others arise within Roman territory itself. Several major revolts require military intervention, and one of the most significant occurs in Judea. Imagine the Roman province of Judea during a period of unrest. Political tensions grow. Resistance develops. Eventually, large-scale rebellion erupts. The conflict becomes intense. Roman forces suffer losses. Additional troops are required. The empire responds with overwhelming military strength. Legions arrive from various provinces. The goal is clear: restore order. Imagine a Roman army assembling for such a campaign. Thousands of soldiers gather beneath their standards. Engineers prepare equipment. Supply lines are organized. The scale is impressive. Rome rarely approaches serious threats halfway. When necessary, it commits enormous resources. Some historians have wondered whether the Ninth Legion may have participated in conflicts like these. Perhaps not in Britain, perhaps not against northern tribes, but elsewhere in the empire. Perhaps on a battlefield lost to history. Imagine a campaign unfolding in a distant province. The soldiers of the Ninth fight bravely, as they have for generations. Yet this time circumstances prove unfavorable. Heavy losses occur. The Legion suffers severe casualties. Eventually, it becomes impossible to rebuild. Its survivors are absorbed into other units. Its name quietly disappears from military records. This explanation lacks the dramatic mystery of a legion vanishing in the wilderness. Yet some historians find it more realistic. Roman military units occasionally cease to exist, not through sudden disappearance, but through gradual attrition, heavy losses, administrative changes, reorganization. History can be less dramatic than legend, but no less fascinating. Imagine a military clerk updating official records. A legion is removed from active lists. Its remaining soldiers transferred elsewhere. No grand announcement follows. No famous historian records the event. The administrative process simply continues. Over time, memories fade. Centuries later, the disappearance appears mysterious. Not because something extraordinary occurred, but because the records are incomplete. And incomplete records often create mysteries. Imagine scholars debating these possibilities. One supports the Britain theory, another favors the eastern frontier, a third argues that evidence remains insufficient for any conclusion. Each examines the same clues. Each reaches a different interpretation. The mystery survives precisely because certainty remains elusive. No explanation completely solves every problem. No theory answers every question. And perhaps that is why the lost Ninth Legion remains so compelling. Imagine standing beside a Roman road somewhere in the east. The sun sets beyond distant hills. A column of soldiers marches toward the horizon. Their armor glows in the fading light. Standards sway gently above the formation. Among them may be men of the Ninth Legion, or perhaps not. The evidence refuses to tell us clearly. The trail remains uncertain. The answers remain hidden. Yet one thing becomes increasingly clear. The mystery is larger than a single battle, larger than a single frontier. It stretches across the entire Roman world, from Britain to the eastern provinces, from archaeological sites to ancient texts, from history into legend. As darkness settles across the empire, imagine those distant roads disappearing into twilight. The soldiers continue marching, the records grow thinner, the clues become harder to follow, and the fate of the Ninth Legion drifts farther into uncertainty. Yet our journey is not over, because before we can reach a conclusion, we must examine the evidence itself, the inscriptions, the archaeological discoveries, the fragments of information that have survived across nearly 2,000 years. For somewhere within those fragments may lie the closest thing we will ever find to an answer, and it is there that our search continues. As we continue our journey tonight, let us move away from theories for a moment, away from speculation, away from legends, and toward the evidence itself, because whenever historians confront a mystery, they begin with the same question. What do we actually know? Not what might have happened, not what makes for a compelling story, but what can be supported by surviving clues. In the case of the Ninth Legion, those clues are surprisingly scattered. Imagine trying to reconstruct a puzzle after most of the pieces have been lost. A few fragments remain, some are clear, others damaged. Many pieces are missing entirely. Yet historians continue trying to see the larger picture, piece by piece, year after year. Imagine an archaeological excavation in Britain. Workers carefully remove layers of earth. The process is slow, patient, deliberate. Every object matters. A coin, a fragment of pottery, a broken tool, a piece of armor. Most discoveries seem ordinary at first, yet together they help reconstruct an ancient world. And occasionally something extraordinary emerges. An inscription. Imagine uncovering a carved stone that has rested underground for nearly 2,000 years. The letters remain visible, perhaps weathered, yet still readable. A name appears, a military unit, a dedication. Suddenly the distant past feels a little closer, a little clearer. Inscriptions are among the most valuable sources available to historians studying Rome, because unlike stories passed down through generations, inscriptions were often created at the time events occurred. They provide direct evidence, small windows into a vanished world. Imagine a Roman soldier helping erect such a stone. Perhaps it commemorates construction work, perhaps a military achievement, perhaps the completion of a building project. The soldier cannot know that centuries later historians will study the inscription searching for clues. Yet, that is exactly what happens. The Ninth Legion appears in several inscriptions discovered in Britain. These findings help confirm its presence, confirm its activities, confirm that it served important roles on the frontier. For historians, this evidence is reassuring. It establishes facts, solid ground upon which further investigation can rest. Yet eventually, the trail begins to fade. Imagine following footprints across a beach. At first, the path is obvious. Then waves gradually wash the marks away. The farther you follow, the harder they become to see. The archaeological evidence surrounding the Ninth Legion often feels similar, strong in some places, weak in others, incomplete throughout. Imagine scholars examining Roman military records, lists of legions, official documents, administrative texts. Many survive only in fragments. Some disappear entirely. Others survive through copies created centuries later. The passage of time has not been kind to ancient paperwork. Even the Romans could not preserve everything. And when records vanish, uncertainty follows. One particularly important discovery comes not from Britain, but from the Netherlands. Imagine archaeologists working near the ancient Roman frontier along the Rhine. As excavations continue, evidence emerges suggesting that detachments connected to the Ninth Legion may have been active there. The discovery surprises many researchers because it hints that the Legion's story may have extended beyond Britain, far beyond Britain. Imagine the excitement among historians. Every new clue matters. Every inscription has the potential to reshape understanding. A single discovery can challenge long-held assumptions. Suddenly, theories that once seemed certain become less secure. Questions multiply. Perhaps the Legion was transferred. Perhaps it operated in multiple regions. Perhaps the story is more complicated than anyone imagined. The mystery deepens. Imagine sitting in a museum archive. Ancient inscriptions lie before you. Photographs cover the table. Maps spread across nearby shelves. Researchers compare dates, locations, names. Every detail is examined, every possibility considered. The process resembles detective work, except the events occurred nearly 2,000 years ago, and many witnesses have been silent for centuries. One challenge facing historians is that Roman military records were never intended to solve future mysteries. They were administrative tools, created for practical purposes. Imagine a Roman official preparing a routine document. His goal is efficiency, not immortality, not future historical research. He records information needed at the time, nothing more. If a document later disappears, no one in the ancient world realizes that future generations may desperately wish it had survived. countless records have been lost in exactly this way. Imagine how many answers vanished with them, reports destroyed by fire, documents discarded during political changes, archives lost to war. The ancient world generated enormous amounts of information. Only a small fraction survives today, and that reality shapes every historical mystery, including this one. Imagine an enormous library containing thousands of books. Then imagine that only a few shelves remain. How much of the story would be missing? How many explanations would disappear? How many mysteries would emerge? The lost Ninth Legion exists partly because history itself is incomplete. The gaps matter as much as the surviving evidence. One fascinating aspect of modern archaeology is how frequently new discoveries challenge old assumptions. Imagine a theory accepted for decades. Then a newly discovered inscription appears. Suddenly, historians must reconsider everything. Ancient history remains surprisingly dynamic. New evidence continues emerging from beneath fields, cities, and forgotten ruins. The story is never entirely finished. Perhaps somewhere beneath the soil of Britain lies another clue. Perhaps a future excavation will uncover a forgotten inscription. Perhaps a lost document still waits in some unexplored archive. The possibility remains, and that possibility keeps researchers searching. Imagine the Ninth Legion itself, thousands of soldiers, hundreds of officers, years of service, generations of lives. Such a large organization surely left traces. The challenge lies in finding them and interpreting them correctly. Because evidence rarely speaks for itself, historians must carefully assemble the fragments, like craftsmen rebuilding a shattered mosaic. Each piece contributes something, yet no single piece reveals the entire image. As evening settles across the Roman world, imagine the ruins of ancient forts growing quiet beneath the stars. The roads remain, the stones remain, the inscriptions remain, silent witnesses to events long past. Some answers they preserve, others they withhold. The mystery of the Ninth Legion survives within that silence, not because evidence is absent, but because evidence is incomplete. And sometimes incomplete evidence creates the most enduring mysteries of all. The campfires have faded. The soldiers have long since passed into history. Yet the search continues. And in our next chapter, we will examine how modern historians have attempted to solve the mystery. What do most experts believe today? Which theories appear strongest? And can the disappearance of the Ninth Legion ever truly be explained? The answers, like the Legion itself, remain just beyond the horizon. As we continue our journey tonight, let us step into the world of modern historians. The Roman soldiers are long gone. The forts have fallen into ruin. The campfires have faded into memory. Yet the mystery remains. And over the past century, generations of researchers have attempted to answer the same question. What really happened to the Ninth Legion? Imagine a historian sitting alone in a quiet archive. Ancient texts rest upon the desk, maps cover nearby tables, photographs of inscriptions lie carefully arranged in neat rows. Outside, the modern world continues as normal. Inside, the historian is traveling nearly 2,000 years into the past, searching for clues, looking for patterns, trying to reconstruct events no living person witnessed. The challenge is enormous. Ancient history rarely provides complete answers. Instead, it offers fragments, pieces of information scattered across centuries. The historian's task is to fit those pieces together. Imagine assembling a puzzle without knowing what the final image should look like. Some pieces fit neatly, others seem uncertain. Several are missing entirely. The mystery of the Ninth Legion feels much the same. Yet despite the difficulties, certain conclusions have gradually emerged. Imagine the early 20th century. At that time, one theory dominates discussion: the famous destroyed in Britain theory. Many historians believe the legion marched north and suffered a catastrophic defeat. The idea feels convincing. After all, Britain was dangerous. The frontier was unstable. The legion had previously suffered heavy losses during Boudica's revolt. Perhaps history simply repeated itself. Imagine the northern frontier once more, mist covering the hills, Roman soldiers moving through unfamiliar terrain, warriors gathering beyond the ridges. The image is compelling, powerful, easy to imagine. For decades, it becomes the most widely accepted explanation. Then archaeology begins changing the conversation. Imagine new discoveries emerging from the ground: inscriptions, military records, fragments of evidence previously unknown. Each new find adds another piece to the puzzle, and some pieces do not fit the traditional theory. Researchers begin noticing inconsistencies. Questions emerge. If the legion was destroyed in Britain, why does certain evidence suggest activity elsewhere? Why do some clues point toward other regions of the empire? The mystery becomes more complicated, not less. Imagine a conference of historians discussing the evidence. One researcher presents findings from Britain. Another discusses discoveries from continental Europe. A third examines Roman military administration. Hours pass. Arguments are exchanged politely. No final agreement emerges. The mystery survives. Because every theory explains some evidence, yet none explain all of it. Over time, many scholars begin favoring a different possibility. Imagine the Ninth Legion leaving Britain altogether, not in defeat, not in disaster, simply under orders, transferred to another province, another frontier, another assignment. Such movements were common within the Roman army. Legions traveled wherever they were needed. Britain was not their permanent home. It was merely one chapter in a longer story. Imagine thousands of soldiers marching south toward the coast, ships waiting in harbor, equipment carefully loaded, standards fluttering in the wind. Soon the legion departs Britain. The frontier disappears behind them. A new destination awaits. This theory solves certain problems, but it creates new ones. If the legion left Britain, where did it go? And what happened afterward? Again, certainty proves elusive. Some historians suggest the eastern frontier, others point toward conflicts along the Danube. A few propose entirely different locations. The possibilities multiply. Imagine the Roman Empire as a living organism. Troops move constantly. Units transfer between provinces. Campaigns begin and end. Reinforcements arrive where needed. The empire rarely remains still. Within such a system, a legion could travel thousands of miles during its existence. The Ninth may have done exactly that. One particularly interesting possibility involves the Jewish revolts of the 2nd century. These conflicts required enormous military resources. Roman armies suffered significant casualties. Entire regions became battlefields. Some historians wonder whether the Ninth Legion participated. Imagine a distant province far from Britain, the climate warmer, the landscape unfamiliar. Yet the soldiers remain the same. Veterans who once guarded northern forts now face entirely different challenges. The empire has sent them where they are needed, and perhaps somewhere within these campaigns, the legion meets its end. Not through mystery, not through legend, but through the ordinary brutality of war. The idea lacks drama, yet history often lacks drama. Real events are not always theatrical. Sometimes institutions simply fade away. A legion suffers losses. Replacements become difficult. The unit is reorganized. Its remaining soldiers absorbed elsewhere. The name disappears. No dramatic final battle, no legendary last stand, just administrative reality. Imagine a Roman official reviewing military rosters. Several units require reinforcements. Resources are limited. Practical decisions are made. The legion's identity slowly dissolves into the larger army. Such things happen throughout Roman history, not frequently, but often enough to be plausible. Modern historians increasingly recognize this possibility, and yet the mystery refuses to vanish completely because definitive proof remains absent. Imagine discovering a missing page from an ancient manuscript. The excitement would be enormous. Perhaps the page contains the answer. Perhaps it merely raises new questions. Such is the nature of historical research. Every discovery changes the landscape. The search continues. One reason the lost Ninth Legion remains so famous is that it sits at the intersection of history and imagination. The evidence allows room for both. Historians examine facts. Writers imagine possibilities. Readers become fascinated by the space between them. The mystery survives because certainty remains just out of reach. Imagine standing among the ruins of a Roman fort at sunset. The stones glow softly in the fading light. Grass grows where soldiers once marched. The wind moves quietly through the landscape. The world feels peaceful, yet beneath that peace lies an unanswered question. A question nearly 2,000 years old. What happened to the Ninth Legion? Perhaps future discoveries will reveal the answer. Perhaps they will not. History does not guarantee resolution. Some mysteries endure, and perhaps that endurance is part of their appeal. As darkness settles across the ancient frontier, imagine the soldiers of the Ninth Legion marching once more, not toward battle, not toward defeat, but into uncertainty, into the gaps between surviving records, into the shadows where history becomes mystery. And there they remain, still marching, still disappearing beyond the horizon, still challenging us to follow. In our next chapter, we will leave the evidence behind and explore something equally fascinating: how the lost Ninth Legion escaped the world of history and entered the world of legend. Because over time, the mystery became more than a historical question. It became a story, and stories have a remarkable way of surviving. As we continue our journey tonight, let us leave the world of archaeology behind. Let us step away from inscriptions, away from military records, away from scholarly debates, and enter a different realm entirely, the realm of stories. Because over the centuries, the lost Ninth Legion became something more than a historical mystery. It became a legend, and legends have a remarkable way of growing. Imagine a mystery surviving for nearly 2,000 years. Generation after generation encounters the same unanswered question. What happened? Why did it happen? Could the truth still be discovered? The longer a mystery remains unsolved, the more powerful it often becomes. The lost Ninth Legion is no exception. Imagine a writer sitting at a desk in the 19th century. Ancient Rome captures the public imagination. Readers love stories of soldiers, emperors, distant frontiers, and forgotten civilizations. The Roman world feels both familiar and exotic, and somewhere within that world lies a vanished legion, a perfect foundation for storytelling. The writer begins imagining possibilities. Perhaps the legion marched into a wilderness from which no one returned. Perhaps it fought a final desperate battle beneath storm-filled skies. Perhaps its soldiers disappeared into the forests of northern Britain. The evidence may be uncertain, but the imagination is free to wander. And wander it does. Imagine Victorian readers gathered beside fireplaces, books open in their hands. The Roman frontier comes alive once again. Ancient roads, misty hills, forgotten forts. The mystery of the Ninth Legion becomes more than history. It becomes adventure. One reason the story proves so enduring is that it contains universal themes: a journey into the unknown, a powerful organization facing uncertainty, a disappearance without explanation. These themes resonate across cultures and generations. People are naturally drawn to mysteries, especially mysteries that remain unresolved. Imagine standing beside Hadrian's Wall. The great Roman frontier stretches across northern England. Stone ruins follow the contours of the landscape. The wind whistles through ancient gateways. Visitors walk where soldiers once stood guard. The setting itself feels atmospheric, almost timeless. It requires very little imagination to picture Roman legionaries watching the northern horizon, waiting for whatever might emerge from the wilderness. Over time, the lost Ninth Legion becomes closely associated with places like these, even when direct evidence is lacking. The landscape itself encourages storytelling. The ruins seem to whisper possibilities. Imagine a child visiting a Roman fort for the first time. Ancient walls rise from the earth. Interpretive signs explain forgotten history. Somewhere nearby, someone mentions the lost Ninth Legion. Immediately, the imagination awakens. What happened to them? Where did they go? The mystery begins another journey into another generation. This process repeats again and again. The story survives because each generation rediscovers it, and each generation asks the same questions. Perhaps the most famous example of the legend's influence arrives in the 20th century. Imagine an author searching for inspiration. The historical mystery of the Ninth Legion provides exactly that: a vanished Roman army, a dangerous frontier, an unanswered question. The ingredients are irresistible. Soon novels begin appearing. Stories expand upon the mystery. Characters emerge. Adventures unfold. The Legion marches beyond the boundaries of history and into fiction. One particularly influential novel helps introduce the mystery to millions of readers. In the story, the Ninth Legion is destroyed in Britain, its eagle standard lost, its fate shrouded in uncertainty. The tale captures imaginations around the world. For many readers, this fictional version becomes almost inseparable from the historical mystery itself. Imagine how powerful storytelling can be. A single novel shapes public perception for decades. Readers remember scenes, characters, moments of drama, sometimes more vividly than they remember the actual historical evidence. The line between history and legend becomes blurred, not intentionally, simply naturally. This happens with many historical mysteries. Stories fill the spaces where certainty is absent. The Lost Ninth Legion provides plenty of space. Imagine filmmakers discovering the mystery. The visual possibilities are obvious. Roman soldiers marching through fog, ancient forts perched on lonely frontiers, battles beneath dark skies, a vanished army disappearing into the unknown. The imagery feels cinematic, powerful, memorable, and so the legend continues growing through books, films, television, documentaries, podcasts. Each medium retells the mystery in its own way. Each adds another layer to the story. Meanwhile, historians continue quietly examining evidence. Sometimes their conclusions differ from popular legends. Sometimes they align. Yet the legend develops a life of its own. Imagine two conversations taking place side by side. In one room, scholars discuss inscriptions and military records. In another, storytellers discuss adventure and mystery. Both conversations concern the same legion, yet they approach it from different directions. Neither is entirely wrong. History seeks understanding. Stories seek meaning. The Lost Ninth Legion offers both. One reason the mystery remains so appealing is that it represents a frontier, not merely a geographical frontier, but a frontier between knowledge and uncertainty. We know part of the story, We do not know the ending, and humans have always been fascinated by unfinished stories. Imagine finding an ancient scroll. Most of the text survives. The final pages are missing. Would you not wonder what happened? Would you not imagine possible conclusions? The Lost Ninth Legion presents exactly this challenge. The beginning survives. Much of the middle survives. The ending remains elusive. And so imagination steps forward to complete the tale. Sometimes cautiously, sometimes boldly, but always creatively. Imagine the soldiers themselves if they could somehow see the future. They would likely be astonished. Ordinary men performing ordinary duties, marching roads, building forts, standing watch. And yet centuries later, people around the world continue discussing their fate. The soldiers could never have imagined such a legacy. Yet history often works in unexpected ways. The mystery becomes larger than the people involved. The story survives long after the details fade. As evening settles across the ruins of Roman Britain, imagine the last light of day touching ancient stone walls. The landscape grows quiet. Tourists have departed. The wind moves gently across the grass. The ruins remain. The mystery remains. And the legend remains. Still growing, still evolving, still inspiring curiosity. Yet before our journey ends, there is one final question we must consider. Not what happened to the Ninth Legion. Perhaps that answer will always remain uncertain. But why does the mystery continue captivating us after nearly 2,000 years? Why do some historical puzzles fade into obscurity while others endure? And what can the Lost Ninth Legion teach us about history itself? As the stars begin appearing above the ancient frontier, those questions await us. And in our next chapter, we will explore them together. As we continue our journey tonight, let us sit quietly for a moment beside the ruins of the Roman world. The battles have ended. The legions have marched away. The emperors have passed into history. The great frontier forts stand silent beneath open skies. Yet one question remains. Why does the mystery of the Ninth Legion continue to fascinate us after nearly 2,000 years? Imagine all the events that have occurred since the days of ancient Rome. Kingdoms have risen and fallen. Empires have appeared and vanished. Entire civilizations have transformed. And still people continue asking about a legion of soldiers who disappeared somewhere within that distant past. The answer may tell us something important about human nature. Imagine standing before an unfinished painting. Most of the image is complete. The colors are vivid. The details are beautiful. Yet one corner remains blank. Immediately your attention is drawn there. The missing section becomes impossible to ignore. History often works the same way. We are naturally attracted to unanswered questions, to mysteries, to stories without endings. The Lost Ninth Legion possesses all three. Imagine a historian examining a complete military record. Every movement documented, every battle recorded, every outcome known. Such a record would certainly be valuable, but perhaps not especially mysterious. The Ninth Legion survives in our imagination precisely because something is missing. The uncertainty itself keeps the story alive. Every generation becomes part of the search. Imagine a young student opening a book about ancient Rome for the first time. They read about emperors, roads, armies, conquests. Then they discover the story of the Ninth Legion, a famous military unit that appears to vanish. Immediately questions arise. The mystery begins working its magic once again. The search continues. One reason the story remains powerful is that it exists at the edge of certainty. We know enough to be intrigued, yet not enough to be satisfied. Imagine if we knew almost nothing about the Legion. The mystery would feel empty. Now imagine if we knew everything, the mystery would disappear entirely. Instead, we occupy a fascinating middle ground. Enough evidence to create possibilities, not enough evidence to choose between them with confidence. The result is a mystery that refuses to fade. Imagine the Roman Empire itself. For centuries, it represented order, structure, control. The Romans measured roads, recorded taxes, tracked military units. They attempted to organize an enormous world. Yet even within such a system, uncertainty remained. The disappearance of the Ninth Legion reminds us that no empire controls everything. No archive preserves every document. No civilization records every detail. History always contains gaps, and those gaps often become the most interesting places of all. Imagine a Roman officer standing on the frontier. The empire stretches behind him. The wilderness lies ahead. One side represents knowledge, the other uncertainty. Every frontier exists between those two worlds, and perhaps that is why frontier stories remain so compelling. They place human beings directly at the boundary between what is known and what is unknown. The Ninth Legion spent much of its existence on such frontiers: Gaul, Britain, perhaps even farther afield. Its soldiers lived where certainty ended, where new discoveries began, and where dangers often appeared unexpectedly. Imagine the soldiers themselves. Most were not famous. Most did not expect future generations to remember their names. They worried about ordinary things: food, weather, family, the next day's duties. Yet through circumstances beyond their control, they became part of one of history's enduring mysteries. There is something deeply human about that. History is often shaped by ordinary people living ordinary lives. Only later do their stories become extraordinary. Imagine walking along the remains of a Roman road at sunset. The stones still lie beneath your feet. Grass grows between them. Birds call in the distance. The road once carried merchants, officials, travelers, and soldiers of the Ninth Legion. Now only traces remain. Yet those traces are enough to connect us with the past, enough to inspire curiosity, enough to keep asking questions. One of the most beautiful aspects of history is that it is never truly finished. New discoveries continue appearing. Ancient inscriptions emerge from the ground. Forgotten documents are rediscovered. Archaeological techniques improve. Each generation gains tools unavailable to the last. Imagine a future archaeologist making a remarkable discovery. Perhaps a forgotten inscription. Perhaps a military record hidden within some ancient archive. Perhaps evidence capable of finally answering the question. It is possible, not guaranteed, but possible. And that possibility keeps the mystery alive, even today. Yet there is another possibility as well. Perhaps the mystery will never be solved. Perhaps the final answer has been lost forever. If so, the Ninth Legion will continue existing in that fascinating space between history and legend, between evidence and imagination, between certainty and wonder. And perhaps that is not such a bad fate. Imagine the ancient frontier beneath a sky full of stars. The Roman forts are quiet. The campfires burn softly. The roads disappear into darkness. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the soldiers of the Ninth Legion continue their journey, not in reality, but in memory, in stories, in the questions we continue asking. Their fate remains uncertain, yet their legacy remains secure. Few military units in history are remembered 2,000 years after their disappearance. The Ninth Legion is one of them, and that alone makes its story remarkable. As the night deepens around us, imagine the distant sounds of a Roman camp settling into silence. The guards take their positions. The fires grow lower. The stars shine brightly above the frontier. The mystery remains unsolved, and perhaps it always will. Yet the search itself has value because every mystery reminds us that history is not merely a collection of dates and events. It is an ongoing conversation between the past and the present, a conversation that never truly ends. And in our final chapter, we will leave the frontier behind one last time. We will follow the Roman road into the darkness, look back upon the journey we have shared, and say farewell to the soldiers of the lost Ninth Legion. And now, as our journey through the mystery of the lost Ninth Legion comes to its end, let us slow our pace and walk together one final time along a Roman road. The night is quiet, the air is cool, the stars shine above the distant frontier, and somewhere far behind us lie the roads, forts, battlefields, and forgotten landscapes we have explored tonight. Imagine standing on a gentle hill overlooking Roman Britain. The last light of sunset has faded from the horizon. The world rests beneath a blanket of darkness. In the distance, a fort glows softly with the light of campfires. The sounds of the Legion have grown quiet. The soldiers have finished their meals. The sentries stand watch. Most men sleep. Tomorrow will bring another march, another patrol, another ordinary day. At least, that is what they believe. They do not know they are becoming part of history. They do not know that centuries later, people around the world will still wonder what became of them. For now, they are simply soldiers, ordinary men living ordinary lives. And perhaps that is the most important thing to remember. The Lost Ninth Legion is often discussed as a mystery, a legend, a puzzle waiting to be solved. Yet before it became any of those things, it was a community. Thousands of individuals sharing a common purpose, men who laughed around campfires, wrote letters home, complained about weather, missed their families, dreamed about the future. Their lives were not so different from our own. The centuries between us may be vast, but human experience remains surprisingly familiar. Imagine one of those soldiers sitting quietly outside his tent. The stars stretch across the sky. The frontier lies beyond the camp walls. Perhaps he thinks about home. Perhaps he thinks about tomorrow's duties. Perhaps he simply enjoys the peace of the evening. He cannot know that history will remember the Legion. He cannot know that its fate will one day become uncertain. The future remains hidden from him, as it remains hidden from all of us. And perhaps that is why the story feels so timeless, because uncertainty is something every generation understands. Imagine all the people who have searched for answers over the centuries. Historians studying ancient texts, archaeologists uncovering forgotten ruins, writers imagining possibilities, travelers standing beside Roman walls and wondering what happened. Each has contributed something to the story. Each has carried the mystery forward. Yet the mystery itself remains, quietly waiting, refusing to reveal its final secret. There is something strangely beautiful about that. In a world that often demands answers, some questions remain open, some stories remain unfinished, some roads disappear into the distance without revealing where they lead. The lost Ninth Legion reminds us of this, and perhaps that is one reason the mystery endures. Imagine Hadrian's Wall beneath moonlight. The ancient stones stretch across the landscape, silent, patient, timeless. The soldiers who built it are gone. The empire they served is gone, yet the wall remains, a reminder that even great civilizations eventually pass into history. The same is true of Rome itself. For centuries it seemed eternal. Its roads crossed continents. Its armies guarded vast frontiers. Its cities flourished. Its influence reached millions. Yet even Rome could not preserve everything. Documents were lost, memories faded, mysteries emerged. The disappearance of the Ninth Legion is one of those mysteries, a small gap in the enormous story of the Roman world. And yet that gap has inspired curiosity for generations. Imagine the Roman road stretching ahead beneath the stars. Its stones glow faintly in the moonlight. The road disappears into darkness. Somewhere beyond the horizon march the soldiers of the Ninth Legion, still moving forward, still following orders, still carrying their standards toward an uncertain future. History cannot tell us exactly where that road ends. Perhaps the Legion perished in Britain. Perhaps it marched eastward to another frontier. Perhaps its story ended quietly through administrative changes and forgotten records. The truth may remain forever beyond our reach. And that is perfectly all right, because sometimes the journey matters more than the destination. Tonight we have walked beside Roman soldiers, crossed ancient roads, visited distant frontiers, explored forgotten forts, and followed one of history's most enduring mysteries. Whether the answer is ever discovered or not, the story itself remains worth telling. Imagine the campfires growing dim. One by one, they fade into darkness. The sounds of the camp disappear, the roads grow silent, the frontier sleeps, the stars continue shining above the ancient world. And slowly, very slowly, the Ninth Legion passes beyond sight, beyond certainty, beyond history, into mystery. As our own journey comes to an end, take a moment to appreciate the quiet beauty of the past, the roads that once connected empires, the people whose lives shaped history, the mysteries that continue inviting us to wonder, and the simple fact that even after 2,000 years, stories like this still bring us together. Thank you for joining me on this peaceful journey through the world of ancient Rome and the mystery of the lost Ninth Legion. Wherever you may be listening from tonight, I hope the story has brought you a sense of calm, curiosity, and connection to the distant past. Now the road fades into darkness, the campfires have gone out, the frontier is quiet, and it is time to rest, sleep peacefully, dream gently, and let the echoes of Rome carry you softly into the night. Good night.